I'm Matilda, not Charlie and Chocolate Factory. She's Matilda and she reads books very much. I like books very much and I read books very much. Goodbye, see you later. The reader of books. It's a funny thing about mothers and fathers. Even when their own child is the most disgusting little beaster you could ever imagine, they still think that he or she is wonderful. Some parents go further. They become blinded by ration. They manage to convince themselves that they're the qualities of genius. Where there is nothing very wrong with all this, it's way of the world. It is only when the parents began telling us about the brilliance of their own boating of spring that we start shouting, "Bring us a basin, we're going to be sick!" School teachers suffer a good deal from having to listen to this sort of twaddle from proud parents. They usually get their own back when time comes to write the end-of-term reports. If I were a teacher, I would cook up some real scorches for the children of doting parents. "Your son, Maximilian," I would write, "is a total washout. I hope you have family business you can push him into when he leaves school, because sure as heck will get a job anywhere else of it. If I were feeling local that day, I might write, it is a curious truth that grasshoppers have their hearing organs inside of abdomen. Your daughter Vanessa, judging by what she's learned this term, has no hearing organs at all." I might even delve deeper into a nature story and say, though periodical cada spends 6 years as grub underground, and no more than 6 days as a free creature of sunlight there. Your soul efforts has spent 6 years as glove in his school, and we are still waiting for him to emerge from the churches. A particularly precious little girl might sing me into saying, "Fiona has the same great beauty as an iceberg, but like the iceberg, she has absolutely nothing below the surface." I think I may enjoy writing end-of-term reports for the skin girls in my class, but enough of that. You will have to get on. Occasionally, one comes across parents take the opposite life who show no interest at all in their children. This, of course, was said, thought it was. Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood were two such parents. They had a son called Marco and a daughter called Matilda, and the parents looked upon Matilda in particular as nothing more than a scab. A scab is something you have to put up with until the time comes when you can pick it off and flick it away. Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood looked forward enormously to the time when they could pick their little daughter off and flick her away, preferably into the next country or even further than that. It is bad enough when parents set ordinary children as the worst crafts and billionaires, but it becomes somehow a lot worse when the child is questioned in extraordinary, and by that I mean sensitive and brilliant. Matilda was both of these things, but she was brilliant. Her mind was so nimble and she was so quick to learn that her ability should have been obvious even to the most soft-hearted of parents, but Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood were both so harmless and so wrapped up in their own silly little lives that they failed to notice something unusual about their daughters. To tell the truth, I thought they would have noticed as she crawled into the house with a broken leg. Matilda's brother Michael was a perfectly normal boy, but sister, as I said, was something to make your eyes pop. By the age of 1.5 for speech grown-ups, the parents, instead of applauding her noisy chatterbox, and told her sharply that small girls should be seen and not heard. By the time she was 3, Matilda had taught herself to read by studying newspapers and magazines to lay around the house. At the age of 4, she could read faster and she naturally began hankering after books. The only book in the whole of the enlightened household was something called the Easy Cooking, belonging to her mother, and when she had read it from cover to cover and had learned all the recipes by heart, she decided she wanted something that was interesting. "Daddy," she said, "do you think you could buy me a book?" "A book?" he said. "What do you want a flaming book for?" "To read that. What's wrong with the telly, for heaven's sake?" "We got a lovely telly with a 12-inch screen, and now you can ask it for a book you're getting." Poor Michael. Nearly every weekend day afternoon, Matilda was left alone in the house. Her brother, 5 years older than her, went to school. Her father went to work, and her mother went out playing bingo in a town 8 miles away. Mrs. Wormwood was hooked on bingo and played it 5 afternoons a week. On the afternoon of the day when her father had refused to buy her a book, Matilda sat out all by herself. She walked to the public library in the village. When she arrived, she introduced herself to the librarian. "Mrs. Phelps," she asked if she might sit a while and read a book. Mrs. Phelps, slightly taken aback at the arrival of such a tiny girl, unaccompanied by a parent, nevertheless told her she was very welcome. "Where are the children's books, please?" Matilda asked. "They're over there on those lower shelves," Mrs. Phelps told her. "Would you like me to help you find a nice one with lots of pictures in it?" "No, thank you," Matilda said. "I'm sure I can manage." From then on, every afternoon, as soon as her mother had left for bingo, Matilda would toddle back to the library. The walk took only 10 minutes, and this allowed all 2 girls hours sitting quietly by herself in a cozy corner, devoting one book after another. When she had read every single children's book in the place, she started wandering around in search of something else. Mrs. Phelps, who had been watching her with fascination for the past few weeks, now got off from her desk and went over to her. "Can I help you, Matilda?" she asked. "I'm wondering what to read next," Matilda said. "I've finished all the children's books." "You mean you've looked at the pictures?" "Yes, but I've read the books as well." Mrs. Phelps looked down at Matilda from a great height, and Matilda looked back up at her. "I thought some were very poor," Matilda said, "but others were lovely. I liked The Secret Girl best of all. It was full of mystery. The mystery of the room behind the closed door, and the mystery of the garden behind the big wall." Mrs. Phelps was stunned. Exactly how old are you, Matilda? She asked. 4 years and 3 months, Matilda said. Mrs. Wells was more astounded than ever, but she had the sense not to show it. What sort of a book would you like to read next? She asked. Matilda said, I would like a really good one that grown-ups read. A famous one. I don't know any names. Mrs. Wells looked along the shelves, taking her time. She didn't quite know what to bring out. How she'd ask stuff. Does one choose a famous grown-up book for a 4-year-old girl? Her first thought was to pick a young teenager's romance of the kind that is written for 15-year-old schoolgirls. But for some reason, she found herself instinctively walking past that particular ship. Try this, she said at last. It's very famous and very good. If it's too long for you, just let me know and I'll find something shorter and a bit easier. Great Inspections, Matilda read, by Charlie Dickens. I'd love to try it. I must be mad, Mrs. Phelps told herself. But Matilda, she said, of course you may try it. Over the next few afternoons, Mrs. Phelps could hardly take her eyes from the small girl sitting for hour after hour in the big armchair at the far end of her room with the book on her lap. It was necessary to rest in on the lap because it was too heavy for her to hold up, which means she had to sit leaning forward in order to read. And the strange sight was this tiny dark-haired person sitting there with her fist now near touching the floor, totally absorbed in the wonderful adventure of Pip and old Miss Havisham and their cobwebs house, and by the spell of magic that Dickens, the great storyteller, had woven these words. The only movement from the reader was the lifting of the hand every now and then to turn her page, and Mrs. Phelps always felt sad when the time came for her to cross the floor and say, It's 10 to 5, Matilda. During the first week of Matilda's visits, Mrs. Phelps has said to her, Does your mother walk you down here every day and then take you home? My mother goes to Aylesbury every afternoons to play bingo, Matilda has said. She doesn't know I come here. But that's surely not right, Mrs. Phelps said. I think you better ask her. I'd rather not, Matilda said. She doesn't encourage reading books. No, as my father. But what do you expect you to do every afternoon in an empty house? Just mooch around and watch the telly. See, she doesn't really care what I do, Matilda said sadly. Mrs. Phelps was concerned about the child's safely on the walk through the very busy village, high streets, and the crossing of the road. But she decided not to turf. Within a week, Matilda had finished Great Inspections, which that edition contained 411 pages. I love it, she said to Mrs. Phelps. Has Mr. Dickens written any other? A great number, said the sounded Mrs. Phelps. Shall I choose you another? Over the next 6 months, under Mrs. Phelps' watchful and compassionate eye, Matilda read the following books: Nicholas Nickleby by Charlie Dickens, Oliver Twist by Charlie Dickens, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Tests of the Year were by Thomas Hardy. Gone to Earth by Mary Webb, Kim by Rudyard Kipling, The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, The Grace of Rest by John Steinbeck, The Good Companions by J.P. Priestley, Brighton Rock by Graham Greene, Animal Farm by George Orwell. It was a formidable list, and by now Mrs. Potts was filled with wonder and excitement. It was probably a good thing that she did not allow herself to be completely carried away by it all. Almost anyone else witnessing the achievements of this small child would have been tempted to make a great fuss and shout the news all over the village and beyond. But not so Miss Potts. She was someone who minded her own business and had long since discovered it was seldom worthwhile to interfere with other people's children. Mr. Hemingway says a lot of things I don't understand, Matilda said to her, especially about man and woman, but I loved it all the same. The way she tells if I feel I am right there on the spot watching it all happen. Fine writer will always make you feel that, Mrs. Potts said. And don't worry about the bits you can't understand. Sit back and allow the words to wash around you like music. I will. Did you know, Mrs. Potts said, that public libraries like this allow you to borrow books and take it home? I didn't know that, Matilda said. Could I do it? Of course, Mrs. Potts said. When you have chosen the book you want, write it to me so I can make a note of it, and it's yours for 2 weeks. You can take more than one if you wish. From then on, Matilda would visit the library only once a week in order to take out new books. Return the old ones. Her own small bedroom now became her reading room. There she would sit and read most afternoons with a mug of hot chocolate beside her. She was not quite tall enough to reach things around the kitchen, but she kept a small box in the outfit, which she brought in and stood on it in order to get whatever she wanted. Mostly it was her chocolate she made, warming up milk in a saucepan on the stove before mixing it. Occasionally she made both or overtime. It was pleasant to take a hot drink up to her room and have it beside her as she sat in her silent room reading in the empty house in the afternoons. When books transported her into a new world and introduced her to amazing people who lived silently. She went on an autumn day sailing ships with Joseph Conrad. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and to India and to Rudyard Kipling. She traveled all over the world while sitting in a little room in an English village.